Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Estelle of Imladris. I am Kai, I use he, they, and she pronouns, and you're back for another episode of Seems Right, my show about costuming and storytelling. Today we're going to do a lot of storytelling talk. But before we get into it, let's talk about the world and what all's going on. Ooh, buddy. We live in a time that is filled with cruelty, genocide, and hate that is blasted at us in a non-stop torrent. And this can feel so overwhelming. No, not something wrong with my mic. Hold on. I fixed it. I pushed a button. Anyways, we'll start over. Hopefully that's better. Yes? Howdy. Hi. Hello. Yay. Thank you. Apologies. I pushed a button. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, Estelle of Imladris. I am Kai, I use he, they, and she pronouns, and you're back for another episode of Seems Right, my show about costuming and storytelling. Today we're going to do a lot more storytelling. But before we do all of that, let's talk about this world that we are in right now. We live in a time filled with cruelty, genocide, and hate that is blasted at us in a non-stop torrent. And this can feel so overwhelming. I want you watching this show to know that it's okay, and I'm going to tell myself it's okay, and very normal to feel overwhelmed. The task before us is not to let that feeling become inaction or hopelessness. All it takes is doing one thing, whether it's a protest, donating, or an act of care for your community, or other acts of resistance to create change. If we all do just one together. It doesn't have to be the same one. One person cannot change the world, but many individuals can. Thank you for being here with me today, but after this video, or hell, even during, either while I'm talking, while we're on break, if you're watching after the fact on a VOD or over on YouTube, you can always pause the video and take one action, whether that is donating, looking into local in-person community action, do something, because also it will make you feel less alone and less out of control of the world that you live in. Don't forget that also care for yourself, your friends, and your family are your community, and your community are fundamental to radical action and change. Be there for those in need in your community and ask for help if you are the person in need. The only way through this is together. In caring for those right beside us in our immediate communities, we must not forget the world that we live in. We should fight for the freedom of those oppressed around the world, especially those facing genocide and violent oppression. I stand with the people in Sudan, the DRC, and all oppressed peoples of the world in their struggle for liberation. In this pivotal moment, as Israel has taken further action against Palestine and the people of Gaza and the West Bank, I stand with Palestine, and I hope you will also not forget them. It is imperative now more than ever that we continue to speak out and demand our governments and organizations look out for Palestinians who are being so persecuted, and they have an active genocide, famine, all of these terrible things being brought upon them. So if you can take one action today, even if it's not even subscribing to this channel, doing anything for me, do it for Gaza. You can use !Gaza in my chat to give you some immediate resources of places that you can donate. You can also always go to Arab.org and do their one click. It will help people in Palestine as well. And if you're able to write letters, email, call your local leaders, now is the time to do that. Thank you so much for always taking the time with me to do this at the top of stream, but also it is so important that we do these things together. This channel is for the wider communities that I belong to, and I'm so grateful that we together as a community can have these conversations and take these actions. Telling stories with you all makes me so happy, and it makes me feel so not alone. So thank you for being here with me and for taking these actions to hopefully make the world a better place. If you're enjoying my streams, you can also consider following me, and if you're able to, subscribing. I am an independent content creator, and all of your likes, shares, comments, subscriptions all help me continue to tell stories, to talk to you, and talk to you about what you can do to make your stories more rich and personal. If you're watching here on Twitch Live, hello! Please, love having you here. And, you can always hit that follow button here on Twitch. That is free. And if you're able to subscribe, fantastic. If you're watching later on the VODs, either here on Twitch or over on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button over on YouTube. You can like this video. You can do all that fun stuff. Or here on Twitch, you can watch the video and follow me just like you could if you were live. So thank you so much for doing all of that. It also helps me so much. All right. Well, with all of that said, hello, Jay. I love you there in chat. I see you. And thank you for that resub, Azra. Today, we're doing some seams, right? I thought I'd do something fun, a little silly. You do see these books. Look at these wonderful books. We don't know what kinds of books these are, right? Not a single one of these is a TTRPG. That would be so strange on this channel. Today we're going to talk about failing. I love failing. I don't know if you caught on to this in my performances or my long history of talking at all of you. I love a failure. So today we're going to talk about failing in TTRPGs. Oh, Milo, thank you so much for that gift sub to Jovi. Also love, I do read, it turns out. Unfortunately, I do the reading of these books, so many books. So what I have for you is a smorgasbord. Oh, the captions aren't working. Oh, I know why. That's what happens. I changed my settings once, and everything goes off the rails. There we go. We did it. We're back. Thanks for that flag. Speaking of failures. So at first I just kind of want to talk to you about failure states and why I think they're so important in TTRPGs and what we can do with them that makes them fun and not punishing. And then we're going to look at the mechanics of failure in as many TTRPGs as I could bring into my little desk area, as well as ones that are on my little digital computer library. It will not be all of them. There are so many amazing TTRPGs out there, and most of the ones I'm going to talk about today are ones that have some kind of failure within their mechanics. There are plenty that you really can't fail. You could just not get what you want, but even then, like, that is largely self-driven. So I'm going to briefly talk about Thousand-Year-Old Vampire, which if you've been watching my channel, you know that I've been playing Thousand-Year-Old Vampire. There is no true fail state at all in Thousand-Year-Old Vampire, except for the ones that you create for yourself. But overall, what all this means. So what does it mean to fail in a TTRPG? The fun thing about role-playing games is that it's so fun to feel heroic and do something stirring and fun. But the other side of it is, in order to have those moments of victory, of success, there is a level of chance. Largely in TTRPGs, it is dice. Sometimes it is cards. Sometimes it is... There's so many, actually. There's actually way too many ways to have a failure in a TTRPG. And sometimes it's just not having enough of the resource or whatever it is. And so we're going to start all the way with the classic examples, all the way down to some more interesting and nuanced takes on what it means to fail, which is something that in tabletop, I feel like we're getting more and more interested in what it looks like to only kind of fail, but you get something, that kind of stuff. So we're going to go through a bunch of different failures in TTRPGs and talk about some fun ways to play with them and do fun things with them. So first of all, my idea of failures in TTRPG is not failing. It's not a lot of people see the word failure as some sort of huge negative, either a mark against your inability to do something, or there's a lot of negative connotation to the word failure. I don't see it that way. I see, especially in tabletop, the word failure is that your character has not succeeded in what they intended to do, but largely as a player, it doesn't negatively affect you if you're playing at a giving, fun table, unless you allow it to. Now, this is with the huge caveat. You'll notice I said at the right table. I think a lot of the reasons why we don't like failing in TTRPGs is derived from very old, very bad things in old TTRPG culture where you are there to win at D&D. And if you miss your hit, that is bad on you, the player, not a story worth telling for your character. And I completely, fundamentally, all the way down to my heart and soul, in my core, believe that that is untrue. And that is, the pass-fail in tabletop is, does your character get what they want or do they not? And that's kind of it for me. Some of this has arisen from the fact that I've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering. And that is a game that does have absolute failure that is both on the way you build your deck, the cards that are in it, the way that your deck draws while you're playing. All of these things play into losing at Magic the Gathering. Well, you can't win at TTRPGs in theory, because the point is that you're telling a story. It's the role-playing game of the game. Anyways, yes, you get the picture. And that is to say that a natural 1, while it is feared. Oh, important question from Risky. What colors are your main deck? Right now, my main deck is a Simic. It's a green-blue deck. I'll talk about that another time, but I have been in it. But yes, the whole wide array of possibilities of failures in tabletop go from rolling a natural 1 that everyone is so afraid of doing, down to having no successes or whatever. And then there's the interesting grading scales of failure, or success, I guess, if you're so inclined to call it that way. And that would be like in PBTA based games where you have a 6 or below is a failure, a 7 to 9 is a mixed success, and a 10 plus is going to be a complete success. And then there's various shades of that across different systems. And the reason I bring this up is because, especially as a performer, actually some of my favorite things are to fail a roll. And the fruit of that always comes from being in stories with people who understand that it isn't a judgment on me if my dice decide that the story that needs to be told is that we fail. So kind of bearing that in mind, that having a bad dice roll is not an indictment of me, but it is a story being told. Not every story in history is one of success or heroicism or any of that sort of thing. So also have failures makes the successes, even the mixed successes, brighter. It makes storytelling for the GM also more interesting, because if your players aren't succeeding, sometimes it means that your story has to change, or sometimes it means the story that you're telling wants to focus in on a particular thing that they can't get out of. So a few examples from my personal body of work, as well as just, all these books back here, which is that, like, when you roll a natural 1, we're just going to use D&D. So a 5-second summary of how to fail a roll in Dungeons and Dragons. You either don't meet your target, whether that is the AC, the armor class of a creature, person, whatever, to make an attack, or you fail on a saving throw, or even on a skill check with a natural 1, or to just not beat the threshold that you need to exceed. Those things mean that what your character was trying to do doesn't work. But if your character was good at everything all the time and always basically got the equivalent of a natural 20, it's a frictionless situation. And stories don't come from frictionless situations. Stories come from struggle, from having something to overcome. And so the failures in that regard are actually more important than the successes. It's very cool to succeed. Don't get me wrong, and don't misunderstand. I love a good critical, give me my really well-timed success all day. But as a connoisseur of playing Fail Kings, I have to also say that, like, The failures are what make them, you know, human. And from our perspective, that's what makes them human. It's what makes their story one in which you're rooting for them to succeed. So, like, using the D&D example, when fighting a dragon one time, I was playing a character that was basically the tank of our party and was needed to fight said dragon. But my character also had very good reason to be afraid of this dragon. And I could not succeed on the wisdom saving throw to not be afraid of this dragon to save my life. It was like maybe an 11 round combat or something like that. And I spent most of it miles away from my party. Not actually physically miles away, but like in another room because I couldn't get closer to the dragon. And that was actually one of the most interesting things that the dice were like, we're telling this story. The story that we're telling today is that your character is afraid of this dragon and you will not get closer. And boy, was wisdom the dump stat of this character, Jason. Yeah, I love a wisdom dump stat. And the story that came from that ended up allowing the rest of my party to be the heroes of that moment where they stepped up and they are the ones that defeated that dragon. But also I got to go and tell another story because I was with a GM who actually could guide the narrative in an interesting direction where, because I wasn't able to engage in the combat, and, you know, I'm a firm believer in the dice are saying what they're saying. This is what we're doing. And that's fine. I was able to find out other things about what was going on in the combat that weren't necessarily helpful to fighting, but were helpful to the story and to my character and to what we were more interested in doing. I went into the dragon's nest instead and found the dragon's eggs. But all of that is to say that, like, I was the fighter. My job was to go fight this dragon, and my character needed to learn in the story, and it was something that I knew coming into this fight, that he can't always be the one to fight through every situation. He can't always win when he puts his mind to things. Sometimes he has to be afraid. Sometimes that's part of being a person. And it was fun for me to have that kind of pull away from the main action of what I built this character to do, because it allowed me to highlight the things that he's bad at. And boy, was he bad at them. And so it's that push and pull of Dungeons and Dragons is basically a combat simulator. And the story that both the dice clearly wanted to tell, but that also I wanted to tell, that this character was imperfect outside of combat. And there's thousands of other examples. I know that I am the master at a bad roll in a lot of the shows that I'm in, where at the most opportune moment where it would be really great for me to succeed on something, instead, Zynon gets clobbered by a werewolf, or the thousands of times that I comedically fail things in Outrunners because Road is hapless, and that works. But it has made me create characters that I relish in their failures, not because I don't like them, not because I don't, love the story that they would be telling as a success story, but it's because I love them so much. I want to see them grow and change, and the failures are a part of that. And so for players, my hope in this conversation is to say that, like, embrace the failure, embrace it. Don't be mad at your dice. I know it can be really frustrating when all you want to do is be super cool and kill the dragon or whatever, but even in games that don't have a mixed success state, thank you for the hydrate. I promise this is water. It's fizzy water, but it's flavorless. It's just water. But I promise that your dice failing a roll, and this is a conversation you can even have in your zero sessions and at your tables, that the dice are not a judgment upon you. And they're a story worth telling. And one of my favorite GM tricks is when GMs ask the player, especially on a critical failure, what happens? because players will always choose the worser of the many possible things, and might even know the thing that will make their character grow and change from the failure. And so my hope is that you take away that rolling a failure in a lot of these game systems that we're going to go through and look at fun fail states within, that there is depth to be found, and failing is a way for you as the storyteller, the shepherd of this one character, kissing them on the head and saying, it's okay. You're going to do better next time because you'll have learned from this one. So love your characters enough to make them fail. And sometimes maybe I love my characters that way a little too much. 'Cause I, like I said, love a fail king. So yes, going through all of these, always think about like the characters that you play currently, or characters even in, shows that you enjoy, like how those players have embraced failure as a huge part of the story. Because the chance in TTRPGs is part of why we do it. Because without that, we could just be writing a novel. So the first example that I want to talk about is D&D. I've already talked about it a little bit, but let me get the source book open. I have... okay, so of the books that I have over here, I have 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, Demigods, Savage Worlds, The Wild Sea, D&D. These ones are too heavy to even do that with. I have D&D. This is 2024. I also have the 2015 rules. For fail states, they're adjacent, so I figured I'll just... we're going to go on D&D Beyond in a second. I'll show you my screen. We'll talk about that. I have the Star Wars Edge of Empire source book. All 3 Star Wars Fantasy Flight game source books all have the same fail state information in them. I have the One Ring, and I have Blade Runner. And on my computer, I have a smorgasbord more, including Daggerheart, and 10 Candles, and GODKILLER. So we're going to get all the way into it. First of all, something of note. If you've been on this channel, you've heard me talk about Helm, remember? And games like 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. These games do not have fail states. Why did my music stop? That's a curious thing. 1,000-Year-Old Vampire's fail state and like the way that you would fail a roll is entirely self-motivated. Some of the prompts tell you like something bad happens to your character, but the hardship, part of the reason I love this game so much is that it's all things that you create for yourself. And even if it says something in the prompt that like something bad happens to your vampire, unless it is the game ending line in this book, you can talk about it as a failure or a success. You decide what is a failure or a success. In this game, in The Helm We Remember, in a lot of other games that are solo journaling style or lyric-based games. Well, thank you. I love this shirt too. Love my pomegranates. And there's birds and snakes. I think bats on this shirt. So yes, 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, a failless game. Also perfect game. So we're going to start with the classic, and we're going to do derivatives of the good old D20 failure state and failure system, which is, I'm going to explain the mechanics. I'm sorry if I'm explaining mechanics for games that you're very familiar with. I'm also very familiar with them, but I want everyone watching to be on the same playing field and understanding, so that when we're talking about what it means to fail, what those costs might be, what the mechanics are encouraging you to look at. If at any point in time you have questions, comments, concerns, please add them to chat. I want this to also kind of be a conversation, and yeah, there's a lot of ways to fail at games, and some of them are written to be a choose your own adventure of failure, and some of them should be, even if they're not written that way, in my opinion. So, Dungeons and Dragons. Source books. We're going to use the free rules on D&D Beyond. Let's switch over. Don't worry, I will zoom it in. I promise. Okay. So these are the free basic rules on D&D Beyond for 2024. And the thing we're going to be looking at on all of these is specifically how to roll things, how to do things. So these are the actions you can take, and most of them do require rolls or abilities. But that's combat. That's not what I'm asking you, game. D20 test. That's what I'm looking for. So the rules of Dungeons and Dragons are that most skill-based abilities that you will do, you have 6 abilities. And for each of them, you have a stat that's associated with them. It's either a plus or a minus or a flat 0. And then you roll this D20. Not this one, obviously, because this one's mine and you can't have it. And don't eat it. I'm looking at all of you. Don't eat my dice. You roll your D20 and you take the result on the die. So I'm going to roll. I rolled a 6. High roller today. We're doing so good, dice. And then you would add whatever stat. And like, I use this mostly for GMing. So one of the main things I do is roll like villagers. And so villagers in D&D are largely statted to have flat 0s on their abilities, which I think is correct. Because they're random NPCs that aren't super plot relevant, and if they die because they have 10 hit points, that's fine. So yes, this 6, if I were making a roll, the threshold to beat would be, if say I was saying like, oh, a flat 10, like this is meant to be a kind of unchallenging, but also like not insubstantial thing to do. If I were making a flat 10 ability check right now, this would be a failure. And for me as a player, I go like, okay, well, it's not really like a crash out, stub my toe failure. I don't drop everything I'm holding like I'm in an infomercial. But also it's one of those like, okay, well, that didn't work. What do we do now? It isn't just, well, that didn't work. It's what do we do now as an invitation to the other people at the table to try something if the GM will allow it, or for my character to make an attempt in a different way. It all depends on what your table culture, is looking for there. But one of the other cool things about that is that it signals to the GM that, hey, maybe this thing that is behind this skill check, whether it's like a perception check or an attack, I'm not succeeding at it. And, in the case of the dragon story, like I didn't succeed at it. I think I was afraid of that dragon for almost 8 rounds. And so that's not working. What other stories can we tell? Or do we need to, as a table, be like, yeah, but you succeed anyways? What makes the story fun and engaging? And for me, I'm always going to say like, no, I'll take the bad roll. I love a bad roll. But some people, like, it is hard to just accept a bad roll. And I respect that. I understand. And so it's, how do I fail this in a way that feels good? So like on a perception check, I like making failed perception checks to be ominous. As a GM, using like atmospheric ominousness of you don't see anything yet is a fun invitation for the players to then go, yet, huh? So what's out there? What do you mean yet? Or if they fail an attack roll, it then becomes the opportunity for the next person to be spotlighted and maybe make the killing blow in that combat. So the invitation of the GM should always be, hey, you didn't make that, but also there could be more. Or someone else might be able to try. And as a player, it's, what do you mean I didn't see that? Oh, okay, what else do we have to do? Am I in danger? And finding ways to facilitate the story and being excited for your character, who is also now curious or frustrated or looking for ways to solve an issue. Yeah. And especially on D20 tests, because they are just flat success or failure, I find that I kind of struggle with them as a GM. I love a gradated scale. I want people to be able to kind of succeed, especially on things like knowledge. It's like, oh, well, you don't know anything about that domain because you've lived under a rock your entire life and you've never heard of gods on a religion check. It's like, no, you know, like the basic things. You know, simple things, or you know, like the broad general answer, but to succeed on the roll, you would get more specificity. And that's kind of how I mitigate my frustration with, like, what do you mean they just don't know things? What do you mean they don't just like have, you know, the ability to see something going on? But sometimes if someone fails, I do make it funny, either for myself or for my players, and say like, and then a leaf fell in your face, or your party member's bow slapped you in the face or something like that. So you missed it. You obviously with the consent of everyone involved in the story. But it should always be a way to either garner more curiosity in what's going on, because sometimes as a GM, if you hide all of your information behind a D20 skill check, people are just going to sit there and be like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't understand what's happening, and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing because my dice won't allow me to engage in the story. And so I always encourage GMs to give them enough to continue the story without giving them supernatural abilities of knowing everything. So splitting the difference on that is hard. Often if it's an ability check that will allow the story to progress, the only way to progress the story is to make an ability check, I make it a group check and I make it a reasonable DC. But I also have in my mind that anytime anyone rolls in D&D, it better mean something, right? Otherwise, they're just rolling randomly, and there's plenty of things to roll for in D&D. But you have to know that if there has to be a fail state available to you in that moment of narrative, in order to be worth it. What I mean by that is, like, if you make someone make a perception check while they're reading a book that's right in front of them, and they can read the words that are in front of them, you can't then basically paywall behind a successful check reading that book. That seems unreasonable unless something intervenes. Indie Wonder asks, how do you adjudicate failure on a check that someone specializes in, such as religion check for your cleric, if your cleric fails, etc.? Again, I tend to go into like, well, these are the things you definitely know. One of my favorite things, though, is to give misinformation on a failed check, because as a GM, I'll warn you, I lie. So one of the things that you can say is like, well, you once heard this thing. And I don't give it a reliable source, but I also don't give all of my good, correct information reliable sources, so that works out. And I give them bad information to act on or to ignore, and let the players use their own sense of intelligence as a person to decide whether or not I'm lying to them as the GM above table. So yeah, it's either like you get the bare minimum of like, oh, you know the domain of your god, and you know the like basic practices, for the example here being clerics. Like, you know how your god works, so I'm not going to tell you that you don't know how to do this ritual, but maybe it's that maybe how well you do the ritual, or if you fail the roll entirely, like maybe you've forgotten a part of it because it's been a while. And that's when I invite the player to be like, does this make sense? You know, is it okay if maybe you've forgotten a piece of information? Because remember that, like, memory is one of those things you always want the buy-in from the player to have that agency within their character's story. So yeah, I do, for knowledge rolls in particular, in D20 systems, and in most systems, if it's a knowledge-based roll, I treat the characters like they know a reasonable amount, and I like to also treat the players like they've read what they've read and learned what they've learned. And so for the most part, it's going to be like well, you know what I put on the notes page for our game. So that's the information your character at least has at the bare minimum. And what I say outside of that on a roll for a check, it is probably true. But if you fail, know that, and I usually make it pretty clear, like, that is, you didn't make it. And if I give you information supplemental to you not making it, chances are I'm lying or misleading you or not giving you all of the information. Yeah, it's knowledge rolls are a tricky one for sure. And there's a lot of knowledge rolls in all of these systems that we're talking about here. So, yeah, so that's how it works. You roll the d20 and then you add your modifier and you either make it or don't. And the hard one for me in D&D is because you fail so often in combat, making failures in combat interesting or exciting. And it's one that I don't have a single answer because sometimes there's just not an interesting way to say, and I miss. But as a GM, I always try and narrate a failure, especially not a critical failure, but just like a regular, like a miss with something environmental. Like if an archer misses a shot, you say, and then the arrow ricochets into the alleyway. Or if someone swings a sword, maybe within the fiction, I say that they cut a buckle or something on their enemy's armor, but their armor is still fine. It doesn't mechanically impact it, but it does give them the satisfaction of, like, you did something. And in the fiction, you might have pissed off your enemy more than hurt them, but it still gives the player something to work with within the fiction that isn't just, well, my dice said I missed. So the more you can narrate in the fiction how the failure works, either as the GM or as the player, or invite each other to do that. Because I've also like fully failed something and involved other players in it and be like, is it okay if I crash into you? Because then everyone is involved and it invites the group to tell the story together. Yeah. So that's a good old D20 test. Now there are various shades of adaptation of this. So for Tales of the Valiant, Pathfinder, there's a few others that are all just like basically models of Dungeons and Dragons, where the D20 test is a pass-fail. I have Mausritter up in here, and Mausritter is a really like meat grindery in the mechanics of the game. They say like you might play a mouse, your character, for like a game and then they'll die. And it is a D20 game, but instead of the 20 being the crit, 1 is the crit. Where's the rolling rules? This is Cairgen. So yeah, this is Mausritter. And I want the how to play. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. So yeah, you make a lot of saves, but in Mausritter, the whole point of the game is that you're a mouse. So you're just a little guy. And the way that they explain it is when you describe your mouse doing something risky where the outcome is uncertain and a failure has consequences, the GM will ask you to make a save against either strength, dex, or will, which are your only 3 stats in this game. So you're actually trying to roll under your stat, which is why as you level up, you raise the number on your stat so that you can have a better chance of rolling under it in a D20 roll. And so it works very similar to D&D, and it is based on the old school D&D rules. And to fail in Mausritter, there are often mechanical consequences. And so when you fail a roll, sometimes your equipment gets damaged or you drop something. Where is the failures? Yeah, there's like a miscast. Whenever one or more of the 6s that are rolled when casting a spell, because you roll a d6 to cast a spell, it's complicated. We don't need to fully understand the game. I promise it makes sense. Roll will for each 6 that is rolled. So if you roll a 6 on a d6, you then also have to make a d20 skill test. And if you fail, you take a condition that makes it harder for you to do things. So there are mechanics involved in it, but again, those mechanics are tied to feeling drained because you've given too much of yourself to this magic. And so it is invitation within the fiction to say, like, well, your mouse is now drained and tired because you tried to do too much magic, or the magic took too much from you. So that is a fail state that has a lot of consequences. We're going to see, like, there are ones that have almost no consequences. There are ones that have a lot of consequences, like that one. And the statuses in this game will be what get you almost every time. So yeah, that's the fail state of a different D20 system that is still in the world of D&D. And then I had Fallout. Fallout is a 2D20 system. And it's another target number based game where so whenever you do something, you add an attribute and a skill. So it's a little bit like doing the way that it's actually mapped out in Dungeons and Dragons, but you do it live on the fly. And you roll 2d20, and you must roll equal to or under your skill, basically. So again, it's going to be like if your thing you're trying to roll is a 24, and you're rolling 2d20, and you roll 2 10s, you're screwed. And whenever you roll a 1, it is a critical success, and there are also complications that can happen if you roll a d20 instead of a critical failure. They call them complications, where things get difficult that you can either fix, like equipment, or if you're suddenly like tired of something. There's a lot of complicated ways to fail in the Fallout game system. I'm sorry, this print is so small. I meant to zoom in on all of these. My mistake. So, crits are 1s, but here we go. I'm looking for complications. It would be like a gun jamming or breaking a lockpick, but also it could be like if it's a social thing, maybe this person likes you a little less because maybe you pushed them too hard or lied to them and they catch wise. But the thing that they say here that I really like is complications do not prevent you from succeeding. They do introduce something new to the story that makes things more difficult. Again, the game here reinforcing that failure is not no, it's you didn't do it the way you wanted to. Which I always find the more engaging option. And they also have an alternative in case they're like, this is a roll that doesn't really have a negative consequence. To give them action points to do things later. Yeah. And I think that's the majority of the D20 games that I have on here. And then we're going to get funky. So let's start by going to something unique that is different than most of the other stuff we're going to be talking about, which is Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds is like, oh, thank you for the hydrate. Let me drink just normal water. Down camera time. So, Savage Worlds is a tiered dice system. So, excuse me, mountain of books. You're in the way. And the fail states in that game are you have to exceed a certain target number, just like a lot of other game systems. But as you get better at things, instead of adding modifiers that change, you go up a die type. So if you've seen Never Stop Blowing Up, the advancing die sizes in that game are very reminiscent of how Savage Worlds works. Rules, here we go. 87. So, to make a skill or attribute check or roll, simply roll the assigned die type to it. Oh, and it's on a 4 or better, you succeed. And then they also have something called a wild card die that is meant to make each player feel like the hero of their own story, which I think is very cool. That you can also succeed on a on your wild card die. And this is the game that like the dice this is the game where the dice can blow up. So if you roll a 6 on a d6, then you can roll the d6 again, and if you roll a 6 again, you can blow it up. Blah 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 blah. And success is measured in factors of how much success you have. Whereas failures are just rolling under the target number. And this is a game where I always think of like, how easy is it to heal damage if this failure in combat causes damage? And how, how complicated do I want to make this? Because often when I'm playing Savage Worlds, it's because I'm doing a more social-based game. Or it's like fun action, not serious, like nickel and dime you every moment action. There is good combat rules in it, but I like it because it's fast. And I'm saying all of this to say that like when you fail in Savage Worlds, then it's not even a scale. It is another pass-fail system, which is why I've put it in with all of these other ones. But when you fail in it, the consequences can be, someone still gets hurt, but it isn't a lasting damage that they can't shake off very quickly. Whereas in D&D, sometimes like you might not have a short or long rest to heal up for like a whole session, and then someone is injured in a way that could kill their character, and that can be very scary. So yeah, fail states are always interesting, but we're gonna get in the later half today, we're gonna get into my favorite kinds of fail states, which are mixed successes and full failures in games like PBTA. So when we come back from the break in a little bit, I've got a bunch of PBTA stuff. But first, to do the crown jewel of derivatives of D&D, in my opinion. Oh, Risky wants to see dice, too. I got that for you, too. I'll do that in just a second. I do have Daggerheart, which I love dearly. And gotta open the rules. So Daggerheart works with a 2d12 system, which is a derivative of the d20 system with more possibility of rolling above a 20. But this is the beginning of us talking about mixed successes, depending on which one you roll your failure, like which die is higher when you roll your failure. You could fail with hope or fail with fear. And it invites, again, that storytelling element that I love in a failure, which is that as a player, when I roll that and I roll with hope, I actually get bonuses and things like that still. And so it's one of those like, well, gosh, guys, I didn't make it, but hey, I know that you're really good at stuff, and reaching out to a companion that way. And a roll with fear, a failure with fear, is also the invitation for the GM to step in and do something that will push the story forward in a way that might be scary or dire, or we might suddenly be in a fight or be in a scary encounter where we're running or, being chased or something like that. Because the failure in Daggerheart is, sure, yeah, you don't do the thing, but the more important thing between in the way that you roll is which one did you fail with? Did you fail with hope or did you fail with fear? So I'm going to zoom in. over here on the demiplane nexus. There we go. So they call them the duality dice. And I love... Oh, and you succeed by rolling doubles, which is kind of cool. Where is... that's criticals. When you roll your duality dice and the fear die rolls higher than the hope die, you roll with fear. When this happens on an action roll, even if you succeed, the GM gains a fear, which is a thing that they can expend to make things happen in the story. And there are consequences or complications that come from the action you are attempting. Not a no, but just consequences, which are just more story. It is a very fiction-forward game system in that way, where even in combat, this is true, where, like, if you roll a fear, the GM can activate an adversary and make the fight move a little bit faster and maybe a little more deadly. So that's kind of the, like, widest view of, like, D20 and what I consider, like, D20 derivative games like Savage Worlds and Daggerheart, where a lot of them are pass failure, and then you get to Daggerheart, where it begins to invite the mechanics to incentivize you to maybe win a little, or maybe lose big. And losing big is always my favorite. But first I owe you some dice before we go to break or anything like that, so I have some fun dice to share with you. Down camera. I know. You're right. You're right. I'm sitting here talking about snackies. So I have my amazing dice set. The D6 is over here somewhere. So I keep it in this set. Maybe. There it is. So this set I love. I won it in a giveaway on Queen's Court Games. These are by Long Dog Dice. No, not Long Dog. These are Odd Duck. I'm like, no, that's a different set that I have. This is Odd Duck Dice, and they're trans dice. I love them. I'll show you some individuals. Savage Worlds, you're in the way. So they have the cool crystal-shaped D12, which I'm a huge fan of. And also longer D10 shapes. And then the D6 is one of these pointy crystal boys. They are a little icy flavored looking, but don't eat them. They're very pointy. Yeah, I love that set. So satisfying. One of my favorite sets that I've ever won in anything. Gotta put them back in my little boxes. No! Oh. Well, on that note, I think this is a great time to get up and stretch. And when we come back, we're going to talk about mixed successes, more about failures, and I will answer... Oh, you want to see a cat? Hold on. Risky gets cat. You're so right. Let me pull up a cat picture. Oh, so hard to be a cat, everybody. Like, impossible. It's impossible to be a cat. Look at this. Look at this baby. Rigby given excellent, like, photogenic model face. He's so cute. And he's got his chin on his tail. Yeah. Unfortunately, he does know that he is baby. It's a problem. But he's so cute. And this shows how, like, silky his fur looks. Yeah. That's my little guy. It's my little monster. All right, folks. Well, with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Get up, stretch, pet your pets if you got them, like this cute guy. And we'll be back in about 10 minutes. See you then. Hello, everyone. Welcome back from break. Before we get all the way into it, just a reminder, we are doing another episode of Seems Right. Jason wants to see a cat. You almost saw a real cat, and at the last minute, Ribby was like, no, I must leave. I'll show you a cat. Oh, no. I hate showing my cats. That's terrible. Let's see here. I posted this picture earlier on Blue Sky, but it's worth repeating because it's so wholesome. It makes me mad. Look at this. Look at this cat. Look at how baby he is. There's no one home behind those big baby eyes. There's nothing there. Yeah, this is the balls of fur that I showed you all on Wednesday. But Elena put funny, cartoony, googly eyes on Watson's fur. Because this is the color of fur that I de-shed when I de-shed him. And it's not his undercoat. It's just what he looks like. I just am obsessed with this picture. It's so cute. And his eyes are so empty. So empty. Yeah. Baby boy. Okie doke. Well, thank you for those. You can always redeem those code points for fun things like pictures of my cats, maybe a real cat sometimes, or for me doing tarot card pulls and a bunch of other stuff. So the more you watch here live on Twitch, the more of those code points you accumulate to do fun and silly things. All right, with that, let's talk about some other tabletop games and the ways to fail at them. No, that is not play them badly. That is fail a roll. I'm looking for... Oh, I wanted to pull up specifically the next one, which is not a D20 system and not a PBTA-based system. There's a smattering of them in here, but I just think that this one is so fascinating. So this is Mothership 2E. Mothership is a horror game. So failure in horror games, A, is scary, like really scary. But also it is meant to be like punishing because you are in many ways kind of playing to be the last one alive. Because I don't think I've ever seen a playthrough of Mothership where at least some of the main PCs don't die. Yes, if it's low, it can be so funny. And yes, Liam O'Brien does low rolls very well. I'm a big fan. He fails good, even sometimes when it's not funny, which is my favorite ones. So Mothership is a horror game, and it's a D100 game. So when you fail, you gain a stress, and stress leads into your panic. So there is the most terrifying mechanic of this game is that when you panic, of course, you make bad decisions, you get paranoid, things start to go really bad. Because it is a horror game, things get really bad. And so not only do you fail, but sometimes when you fail, you you fully panic. So it isn't just about embracing that failure happens. Sometimes in games like Mothership, in horror games, failure is also a part of the tragedy you are telling, because some TTRPGs are stories of heroism and some TTRPGs are stories of horror and fear. So I'm going to do some horror, fear, and like ones where the deck is purposely stacked against the players because the point isn't to win. It is the story that you tell as you lose. So for Mothership, when you fail, when the worst has happened, to avoid panicking, roll the panic die, which is a d20, greater than the character's current stress, or else panic. So when you fail, you gain a stress, and then every time you do a panic check, you have to roll more than your stress. So then we're going to look at the panic table, because this is what can happen if you... Oh, God. If you fail. So here are some of them. I'm not going to read them all. Some of them are rather gory and sad and scary. So some of the like lower level ones that could happen, you get an adrenaline rush and you actually gain dice to roll and you reduce your stress. Sometimes you just gain more stress. But these are also not only ways to mechanically show that your character is panicking, but also it gives you something as a player to kind of run with. So, Coward, gain a new condition. The condition is you must make a fear save to engage in violence, otherwise you flee. So are you suddenly too afraid to fight? Is basically the what that check is for. And this is one of those, like, the game is incentivizing you to have big emotions and big reactions to bad things happening around you. And they will happen because it's a horror game. And you can have nightmares. You can suddenly, be deflated, feel doomed. And these things have mechanical reinforcement. But the thing that I'm here to reiterate is not only are these mechanics telling you to tell a story, but you as the player can then embrace those things as part of your character or have a conversation if they really feel like they are not. And I hope that you are all playing at tables where those conversations are welcome. I personally love taking a bad roll and then love having a really bad consequence. It is one of my favorite things. And so I think it explains a lot when I say Mothership was my first actual play. Mothership 1E was the very first actual play I was ever in, because I love a failure. And I failed so bad that I destroyed the human race in that game. So, in it to win it. I will warn all of you that there are things in this game that I think some of you should have some content warnings for. There is a little bit of sanest language in this game. There is a little bit of there's actually quite a bit of loss of agency in this game, but it is one that you choose to do when you play this game, and it is a table safety conversation to be had before you play Mothership. Because it's scary, and a lot of these games I'm going to be talking about scary fail states are ones that you should go in knowing that this is what the games are about, and that to embrace the failure is a part of playing the game, but also to do it in a fun way, in a fruitful way, and not in a mean way. So, this game, and then I also, I didn't blow it up. I corrupted them with an alien spore virus. I turned them all into a mycelial network, basically, but for coral. It's fine. So yes, that is the fail states for Mothership, and that is to say that these give you things to grab onto. If suddenly you're nervous, you get to play your character as being nervous. If your character is overwhelmed, you get to play your character being overwhelmed, and you can keep it fun and within the fiction and then have those table check-ins, but go for it. This game incentivizes you to go for it. There are other games where you are essentially doomed to fail, like 10 Candles. So this is one of my favorite games of just like, you will fail. This game is not about stopping the end of the world. So 10 Candles takes place after the world has begun to end, basically. And it is a dice pool game with a shared pool of d6s. And what happens is when you take a big action, you roll that pool of dice. And the GM of the game is rolling another pool of dice, and the dice transfer from the players to the GM over time as the story progresses. So it makes it more likely that the GM will win the longer the game goes on, because every game of 10 Candles is meant to end the same way, which is that all of the player characters are dead. So it's another game of it will end, you will fail, because at some point you're going to be rolling 1d6 and your GM is going to be rolling 9. And so when you fail a roll in 10 Candles, a lot of things happen. And it's one of my favorite ones to talk about for this subject, because the point isn't I've messed up something. The point is we are all in this together. That's why it's a group dice pool. And you can then move the fiction forward, because when you fail that roll, the scene fully ends and the narrative kind of steps away from that moment for a second, and there is something akin to a ritual, essentially, of speaking truths into the game. So when you fail that roll, that scene ends. What you were doing, it's over. Sometimes it means your character is dead. But the point is that that moment of the fiction stops, and you don't succeed, but more importantly, then the story moves forward by then allowing the entire table and everyone at it to speak a truth into the fiction. So again, this is a very fiction-forward moment. I have to find the actual rolling instructions. That's what I'm looking for. This is CareGen. And here we go. No, that's Brinks again. God. For a game that is extremely straightforward, there are a lot of rules. I love it very much, but so when you fail, then you all speak these truths. And the point of the story is to fail in a way that you love these characters enough to tell their story with meaning. I'm going to stop scrolling like that and just search. So what it says specifically here, this is what I was looking for. Apologies, that took me a minute to find. Wrong button. When the scene ends in 10 Candles, there's an opportunity to move the story forward, not unlike in a film or book when the characters have suddenly arrived at their destination. The circumstances have changed and new things have become true. This is done through establishing truths, which is a special phase of the game that occurs at the end of every scene. So the thing I love about this is that when you fail a roll as a player, everyone then gets to continue to contribute to the narrative, and it really puts front and center that this game is not about the individual characters succeeding at any one thing. It is about the story being told. And so when you fail, the point is to progress the story. And so you progress the story by speaking truths and then going back into a scene. And then it becomes more difficult to succeed moving forward, is kind of the point. And there's a ticking clock on it. It's called 10 Candles because you literally light 10 candles at the start of play. And when they all go out, the world ends the rest of the way, all the way. So yeah, it is a game about failing, basically. And the sibling to this thought is also Dread, which is the game that's played with a Jenga tower. That is, again, a fiction-forward horror game that anytime anyone makes a big choice, they pull a Jenga block, and if the block falls over, they die. And that's it. That's how the game works. Because these are not stories about succeeding. So there are, like, D&D is kind of the polar opposite, where the point is to succeed, and as you level up, and as the story progresses, you become better and better at succeeding, and you can succeed at even greater and greater tasks. Whereas in horror games, the failure is the moment in which the story pivots and eventually ends, either for an individual character or for the whole game. And to embrace the art of telling a beautiful failure, a loving failure, or a failure that is a story for the viewer and not necessarily for the character. So a character that may fail because of their own flaws or shortcomings, or a character that makes a flawed choice that ends up ending their story, is a part of playing these particular kinds of games. And I encourage you, if you're someone who struggles with the idea of failing at a table, to look at horror games, to look at fiction forward, especially horror games, where the point is to experience the failure and love it, and lovingly tell the story, knowing the failure is a part of it. So I think it made me a better storyteller to kind of play a lot of these in rapid succession, because most of my early actual play is actually horror. So yeah, my love of 10 Candles and Dread and Mothership all boils down to, like, you have to love the failure. You can't just do it because the mechanics tell you to. Otherwise, these games are not fun. So I think that it is a fun exercise to play games that force you to fail in a way that is the point. Yeah. God, I love this game. So that's my, like, you will fail games. Close. We'll get to Honey Heist. It's a game where failing is just for funsies. We're gonna do the opposite, actually. We're gonna do Honey Heist right now. So Honey Heist couldn't be a more opposite game. Like, I feel like when you fail at Honey Heist, you're like, but I'm a bear, so it's fine. And that's the funny thing about Honey Heist. For those of you who don't know what Honey Heist is, it's a game where you're playing a bear, and the bear is trying to steal something, and often is pretending to be a human to do so. So this is fully like a picnic basket heist. It's an unserious, delightful game where the bears have stats, but boy, do they they matter. They do. You do make choices based on the chance of succeeding or failing as a bear. It says, hey GM, when a player rolls dice and the lowest die they roll is a 6, introduce a twist or unseen complication into proceedings. When a plan fails and you run into difficulty, move 1 point from criminal to bear. So when you fail at something, you stop being a criminal, a humanoid in a lot of cases, into you become more bear-like. And then the opposite is when a bear fails at something, it becomes more criminal-like. Yes, Honey Heist is a deeply unserious, perfect game. And it is a game about shared fiction and about just having fun in having the fiction. So it is the lighthearted version of what these horror games are as well, of like, it's okay to fail. And actually, mechanically, it's very helpful sometimes to fail, because you want to fail if you become too much of a criminal or you become too much of a bear, because if you become too much of either of those, you cave to that desire and you become fully a criminal or fully a bear. It's a very unserious game. So, like, it is still, though, at the end of the day, like, it helps you to lose, and it does push the fiction forward when you lose, because otherwise I feel like if there wasn't that encouragement to move the story forward when you fail, people would just sit around and make dumb bear jokes instead of playing this game. And if you want to see a funny version of an already funny game, Connie did reskin Honey Heist as Honk Heist a little while ago. We were all geese except for Val, who was in fact a washed up duck. It's a good time. You can go check that out on Transplaner. I think it's only on the YouTube. It's a good time if it exists anywhere still. And it was GM'd by C. Thomas. A rare C. Thomas is the GM experience. A deeply unserious time in which we were all geese. So yeah, Honey Heist is one of those ones where the ebb and flow of the game does depend on you succeeding and failing so that you don't become all bear or all criminal. Okay, let's get into PBTA games. And no, wait, sorry. There's still one. Let's do PBTA and then we'll come back to non-PBTA games. So what do I have here? I have various shades of games inspired by PBTA that I have out, but the ones that I'm going to talk about I'm going to start with GODKILLER. We all know what GODKILLER is. GODKILLER by Connie Chang is a game that when things occur, you have to either roll dice or answer questions, right? Or both. It's a lot of question answering, actually. Thank you for the hydrate. And when you succeed in GODKILLER, you want to only succeed so much, because while the GODKILLER C. Thomas can only roll overkills for most of the game, broken. The way it works is on a 7 to 9, you hit, you do the thing, and there's usually a little bit of a drawback, but it's you do the thing and you do it well enough that you succeed at what you're doing. On a 10 and plus, you succeed too good. For the moves sheet, which is I think one of the best ways to, so this is from the Ash Can on itch. Forthcoming, there will be a nice full version of GODKILLER from Evil Hat that Connie's been working so hard on. But in the meantime, we're going to look at the Ash Can play moves. So I'm going to look at, this is Wield of Power, which is when you like wield actual divine power that you as the GODKILLER control. An Overkill, a 10 plus, the GM will describe how you also drain, terrify, or wreck what's around you. Because you are wielding great, awesome in the most traditional sense of the word, power. And on a miss, a 6 or below, your power sputters and your enemy seize on your weakness. You suffer 2 strain instead to achieve the full effect before they can react. So you can still, like, push yourself to succeed. So this is a game entirely driven by, yes, you can fail at things, but you have the choice within the mechanics and in the fiction to succeed when it is needed or when your character would push themselves to do so, which I really enjoy. Because a lot of the moves allow you to suffer strain to do things. So, and PBTA is full of this kind of stuff where it is a gradient of successes and failures. So another example I have is City of Mist, which is also, even though it doesn't have PBTA rules in the most traditional sense, it is still a PBTA game. It still has 7 to 9 and 10 plus mixed success versus full success. So like face danger, that's more complicated to explain. I will explain it with go toe to toe, which is their like fighting thing. When you use your abilities to overcome someone or something in a struggle for control, state what your goal is. Your opponent can describe how they respond at their option. Roll plus power, which is a particular calculation of your stats. And on a 7 to 9, on a 7 to 9, choose 1, and on a 10 plus, choose 2. So when you succeed, you can manage to achieve your goal or take something they have. For example, take something they hold. You get them good, giving your opponent a status, which is how you inflict damage. Or you block, dodge, or counter their best attempts. So if you succeed, if you mix success, you choose one of these things, and on a full success, you choose 2. But on a failure, you choose none of them, which means the game is setting up for you the dichotomy of when you succeed, this is what you get. So when you fail, this is what you don't get, and how do you tell that story? And that's why I love PBTA games. And sometimes they even give you the option of like, the GM will choose like the negative effect. Trying to find, there's some really good ones, and I feel like it's in City of Mist. I don't remember. I just realized I also forgot to explain the die system for PBTA. So PBTA is 2d6. These are d6s. You roll them both, and you usually add them together. And so I play a lot of PBTA games. I have a lot of d6s. These are the d6s for Starscape, which is also a PBTA game. From Golden Lasso Games. So yes, okay, they don't have the fail state things I thought they had. It's fine. But basically, like, on a loss, your job is to then internalize, like, this is what you don't get, and what story does that tell? Yeah, and then there's Demigods, which is also PBTA. Maybe it's Demigods that has the ones I'm thinking of. Maybe. Demigods by Jason Mills from Probably Okay Games. Big fan. You can check out a great actual play of it on Transplanar called Freeman's Sanctuary for Exceptional Youth. That was GM'd by my beloved Sam Starr recently on Transplanar. I know there's a move sheet. Not finding it. Being really bad at searching game books today. But basically the idea, again, is it's very similar to City of Mist, where when you succeed, you get to do one of them, or when you super succeed, you get to choose 2 of them. So there's 3 very different examples, because in City of Mist, the difference is how they accumulate it. This is a playbook game, and so is GODKILLER. City of Mist, you make your own playbook, and that's how the math is accumulated. There we go. And in GODKILLER, there is the overkill instead of just getting to do extra success. Yeah, it's interesting ways to fail at things, because the mixed success also implies, like, you don't get everything you want. In the example from City of Mist of, like, you only get to choose one, you get to decide if you're going to actually do the thing you set out to do, hit them hard enough to actually do damage, or avoid taking damage, which implies that if you fail, you can take damage, which is true. You don't succeed at what you want to do, and or you don't actually do them any permanent harm. You just do something spicy cool. And so the failures can be everything from, like, failing an attack roll like you would in a D20 game of pass fail, like you just don't hit them, all the way to like you hit them the way you didn't intend to, and there are other consequences. And the mechanics of the game encourage that kind of thinking in PBTA games. Okay, the last few I'm going to talk about. I've got. Oh, I almost forgot the other reason I was going to talk about demigods is when you fail, you mark a thread. And a thread is the way that you level up. So if you fail a roll, you don't get to succeed, but the thing you do get instead is experience to grow and become more powerful. You take more moves, you can do all kinds of stuff. So the failure incentive is actually incentivized in both Demigods and a bunch of other PBTA games that I've played, in which you fail and thus you learn something, and in a certain number of failures or a certain number of sessions you can level up. So the art of failing can be sometimes very fruitful because you can level up. Isn't that nice? Let's see here. What is this? So then that's Demigods. Let's talk about, speaking of mixed successes, one of my favorite game systems. We're going to talk about the Star Wars Fantasy Flight game system. The reason why I have my dice box out. So I don't think I brought the actual dice over. No, I did. Whew. So we're going to talk about these funky dice. And one of my favorite loss situations in tabletop. And it's something that, like playing horror games, I actually learned quite a bit from this dice system. So I hate specialty dice games. I want to be able to roll my d20s or my d6s and have a good old time, and they're mine, and I've chosen them, and they're special to me. But because I love Star Wars so much, I did learn the Fantasy Flight TTRPG. This one. Sorry for that grand tour of all of the screens for a second. And it is a specialty dice game. I think I've shown these to you on stream before. But it is a dice pool system where you create a dice pool using these various colored dice that mean different things, which is so complicated. But every symbol on these means something, and you add them or you don't, which is why blank ones matter and make me mad. The way this works, I'm going to speed explain these rules because unless you're going to play this game system, you'll never need this knowledge, but I want you to understand what I'm talking about when I show you the ways to fail at this game and how it is actually really interesting, and it actually harkens to what I like about Daggerheart and how you can fail with hope or fear. In the Star Wars Fantasy Flight game, you can fail, you can greatly fail, and you can also do both of those things with either a threat or an advantage. So this dice doesn't matter. This is the Force. You heard it here, folks. The Force doesn't matter. It does, but not today. So this is your regular standard ability die. Think like Vampire the Masquerade, which we're not talking about today because I don't want to. Failures in that game, also super interesting, but I don't want to. The symbols on here, this is a success. This is a straight up success. And this is an advantage. So if you roll these, this is what you're trying to get so that you do the thing that you're wanting to do. You want to astrogate through hyperspace, you need this. You want to shoot a guy, you need this. But this, and the game system incentivizes and gives you different ways to spend your advantages, your successes, and then there are also, of course, to counter it, failures and threats. Failure, threat. And the there's the super version. These are the proficiency dice. This is a triumph, which is basically a critical success, and you can roll more than one if you roll more than one of these dice. And on the, I think these are, it's not called danger dice. It's in that world though, and I don't remember off the top of my head. This is the critical failure symbol, so you can critically fail. And then there are these other dice that are just boosters and bonus. So this would be like to add situational things, or and there's also again a negative version of this that just has a few successes and failures on it. And the way it works is when you're making a roll, the GM will say this is a 2 difficulty roll. So if I were building a roll right now, this is a 2 difficulty roll. So you roll 2 difficulty die. That makes it like kind of hard to accomplish, but not super hard to accomplish. And if you are, say, good at something, there's a decent chance that like a standard roll would have 2 yellow and a green, or 2 green and a yellow. I'm not going to explain all the rules of why you do that, but basically, like, this is what a standard roll might look like. I'm going to roll it for you so you can see how wild this gets really fast. So that you can understand when you fail in this game, you fail in the strangest ways possible. So, the math on this, I succeeded really well. This is not a failure in any way. So this is 4 successes, and that's it. That's the whole roll, is 4 successes. I have 4 successes to spend. One of them will accomplish the thing I want to accomplish. These are the dice for the Fantasy Flight Star Wars system, but I'm talking about all kinds of ways to fail in exciting ways. So this is not a failure roll, but I'm going to change it to I'm going to show you what a fail roll looks like. Put some failures in there. The dreaded blank die. And that's a fully negated roll. That's annoying. Let's do this. Okay, so what we have here are 2 failures, a threat, and 3 advantages. And the threat and the advantage negate each other. So this is a roll with 2 failures and 2 advantages. You fail at what you're doing, and you fail at it pretty badly with 2 failures. And then you gain 2 advantages from doing the thing that you are doing. So going back to my example of astrogation, which is charting a way through the stars in Star Wars, you do have to roll to do it because it is a skill. And if, say, this was an astrogation roll, you cannot find a chart to safely navigate through hyperspace to get to from point A to point B. But while you're doing it, you might discover something interesting that's been uploaded on your computer's astrogation interface, or maybe your droid tells you something that is helpful. There are a lot of ways to interpret an advantage, and it is a conversation between the GM, the player, and sometimes even the whole table of like, maybe this person also overhears something interesting, and it is a way to let the universe kind of inform other ways to tackle a problem or tackle a different problem. I often will also seed in information that I want the players to know when they gain advantages, even if it is not directly relevant to the thing that they are rolling for, as a way to progress the story in an interesting and new direction. To say like, well, you failed at the roll to backtrack the signal of a communication you received. But when you did that, you realized, wow, this is so complicated to backtrack. There was probably really advanced technology. So whoever messaged me is someone who has very advanced technological knowledge or equipment. And that can tell you quite a bit in Star Wars. That is a real example from my Star Wars game, because one of my characters is maybe being haunted by the ISB. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I love this system and the way it adjudicates failures, because when you fail, yes, you don't or you do accomplish the thing. And you can do or don't accomplish it very big, But the places where it gets interesting is, do you do it and then gain an advantage, or do you succeed with a threat? So like, one of my absolute favorite things that's happened in this game in a while, and Lena, I'm going to put you on blast for a second because I love you. But Lena plays a Mandalorian in that game, and her character was all gung-ho about being in a fighting pit, and was going to fight this Kath Hound, which is a, commonly seen in fighting pits in Star Wars as a, like, killing sport. And that's grim, right? And the dice said, you succeed, you do it, but you don't feel great about it. And kept on saying you succeed with a threat, or you fail with an advantage. And so this constant conversation of mixed success turned it into a very interesting and engaging fight in which there was lessons to be learned within the story that is very like Star Wars forward, of like, you can't always fight your way through situations. Winning a fight is not always glorious. And sometimes stepping into the ring at all is maybe not the best call. And that wasn't my intention coming into the moment in the story as the GM, but it was the one that the dice really wanted to tell. And so you always got to like respect the dice. And in this game system, it makes it really easy to like say like, well, the story ebbs and flows in these directions, and like, oh, while you're in there, you learn these interesting things about the fighting pit, about the hound you're fighting, about, the people that do this, about yourself, because the advantages and disadvantages, the advantages and threats, inform the way that you can tell the story. And as the GM, like, there are whole cheat sheets of like, this is ways that you can spend successes, these are ways that you can spend failures, these are ways you can spend advantages, and these are ways you can spend threats. Just like how in Daggerheart they have suggestions on how to spend hope and fear. And so I find it very interesting, and it's why, even though I hate specialty dice, I do like these ones. Because they are one of the most complicated win states and fail states that I play with regularly outside of PBTA. So yeah, I hope that explained a little bit of like why it's important to fail in TTRPGs, but also like ways to engage with it as a player and as a GM, and just things to think about when you're playing TTRPGs, because failing is part of it. You wouldn't roll dice if you weren't interested in playing games that had failure in them. And it's up to you and your table culture to have the conversation of like how far you are comfortable failing in your stories, because sometimes it's okay to just remove player character deaths from your table. That's fine. If that's what makes it unfun for you, have that conversation. Say like, listen, I know that this game has death saves and my character could die, but my preference would be that maybe I come back as a reborn, maybe I take a scar. There are fun mechanical ways to kind of work around what your comfort and limitations are within having fun at failing. Because if you feel unsafe to fail, like, I would actually think about it. Oh, let's see here. Anywater has a question. What's one of your favorite failure moments when playing, or what's one of your failure sequences you're most proud of? Gosh, I fail a lot. I really like it. I think maybe one of my most recent iconic failures was in Arc 3 of the Chaos Protocol. So there's a spoiler for Transplant. I'm going to put my hand up. When my hand comes down, the spoiler will be over. But in Arc 3 of the Chaos Protocol, Zynon failed a roll to resist really wanting to eat some blood, and it ended with him licking a table and being kind of gross and weird about it. But to me, that was fun. I love that stuff. So yeah, spoiler over, but I love a failure for a character that could use growth and understanding in their own failure. And I think maybe one of my favorite other ones is like any time you see like, I will tease Val until the end of time, my dear and beloved Atso Spirit Bear, for what may be one of the worst rolls I've ever seen in Arc 1 of the Chaos Protocol. So again, I'm going to put my hand up. When it comes down, again, the spoiler will be over. In Arc 1 of the Chaos Protocol, Seer got punted out of the air in a combat because Val, out of all the unlikelihoods rolled 5 1s on 5d6s. And it was just legendary. And Connie took it and just sprinted with it, and it was awesome. Spoiler over. So I love a failure. I will embrace and run at them. And you'll notice that they're moments worth telling. They're interesting character moments. They are fun. Sometimes they're silly. And they always invite more story. So I encourage you to fail to invite more story, because those are always the best ones. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for your great questions, for enjoying my huge rant about different TTRPG systems, because this was very... it's one of my favorite near and dear things, is to fail at a table and turn it into an invitation, or turn it into more story and growth. And I could go on and on about failures that I love, because I make characters that I enjoy them at their best, and I enjoy them at their worst. So I hope that you can also do the same. And I know that that is a hard journey for some people. So I'm here to invite you on that journey with me, and enjoy the failures. It is what we are also here for, besides winning. And with that, we're going to talk about what's going on for the rest of the week. So tomorrow, speaking of failures, and I didn't even get to it, I was going to talk about Electric State. I could have kept going. I was like, I'm just going to grab all of my TTRPGs and talk about all of them. Turns out I have too many. I know, that's so surprising. So tomorrow I'll be back over on Happy Jacks for more Road to Nowhere at 7 p.m. For more Electric State, in which I fail all of the time, and it's a really good time, where I play a drone pilot named Kilo. We've been off because of Gen Con and Comic Con, so I'm very excited to get back to it. And then on Wednesday, I'm actually going to be streaming a little early because I have another meeting that needed the evening. And so I'll be streaming from 1 to 3 on Wednesday for more 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, where we're getting closer and closer to where I know the game starts to end. But everything was so nice and pleasant and lovely last time, so that'll definitely happen again, right? That's how games work. It won't happen that nicely again, but that's fine. And then you can come back here on Thursday morning for more Rise and Grind, where I'm going to probably continue to stream Tales of the Shire and have a grand old time with it. And then that'll be it for the week from me. I do have some stuff that I've been recording. Oh, wait. And then I have on Sunday. Just announced. You can go over to Vault Companions on Sunday for the premiere of Hades Coda, where we will see what the end of an era looks like from the side of the divine. So come on over to Vault Companions on Sunday at 4 p.m. for Hades Coda, with a wonderful cast of familiar faces, including Patrick, who's here in chat, Lena, my best friend, and we've got Derek and Natalie, and it's going to be such a good time. I'm so excited to share that story with you. So that'll be Sundays from 4 onward. We don't run super long shows. And then I got some stuff coming up next week, so please check all of that out. And we also have the always ephemeral but definitely coming out still Lori's House that you can go check out, which is an actual play. If I can type. There we go. From Tendervicious Studios, using the Home We Remember TTRPG, which is a forthcoming game that we also help co-create with Frivolous Bear Studios. So you can go check out Lori's House wherever you get your podcast. Episode 6 just dropped. And there's a bunch of interesting things folded in. So if you've already listened to it, maybe go back and listen to it. And we also have a fun Discord where people are starting to pick up on some of interesting threads and incongruencies in the story. And you can check out The Home We Remember, which will be dropping on September 8th. It is a 40-page PDF of the ash can of the game. I'm so in love with it. We had our amazing layout designer, Nalawu Jay, in chat earlier. It's so beautiful. I'm so proud of that game. You can go check that out. And gosh, I have so many other things going on. Oh, and then you can also check out my labor of love and my invitation to people to gain a little bit of education on the harms of Orientalism, called Kashi, specifically focused on my experience and the experience of other Japanese American creators. Even if you are just a consumer or enjoyer of TTRPGs as a hobby, it is important that we take action for ourselves against Orientalism in TTRPGs, because everything has samurai and ninjas in it, and none of it was done with actual Japanese creatives, and I'm tired of it, and you should be too. So thank you for checking out Kashi, for reading and educating and sharing, because one of the ways to fight what's going on in the world is to learn and change. And so I hope that you check out Kashi and learn and read, and maybe not change anything, because maybe you're doing great. But if nothing else, you'll do it with more information. Yeah, so that's me for today, and I'll see you all tomorrow for Road to Nowhere, and I'll be back here on Wednesday for 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. In the meantime, have a nice evening. See y'all very soon. Bye!